Petrol isn't just fuel. It moves your food, your medicine, your entire life. And one war can flip prices overnight for the whole world. But you know some countries got cheaper fuel after the war. Today, we're exploring petrol prices across the globe. Let's go. The percentage shows how much petrol prices changed after the Iran war. In Libya, Iran and Venezuela petrol is actually cheaper than bottled water. The Strait of Hormuz chaos actually worked in their favor. In Turkmenistan, petrol is state-owned, state-priced, and totally sealed off from global markets. Their price is stable. Saudi Arabia's oil kingdom kept prices frozen during the war. Because when you are the oil, a supply crisis is everyone else's problem, not yours. Iraq is sitting on the world's fourth largest reserves. With heavy subsidies, they froze domestic prices during the war to stop local panic. Sudan is fully dependent on imports. When the war hit global supply, Sudan felt every cent of it. Russia produces its own oil. The Iran conflict added pressure, but Russian oil kept the damage contained. UAE built the Middle East's biggest oil infrastructure, but when Iran struck their regional energy facilities, prices jumped significantly. Vietnam imports almost all its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. When Iran closed it, Vietnam got hammered. Prices surged over 20%. Kyrgyzstan is dependent on Russian oil. Their Russian supply chain partially insulated them from the Gulf disruption. In Malaysia, prices surged over 58%, one of the biggest jumps in Asia, because their refinery capacity couldn't keep pace with the supply shock. Japan imports everything. After the Strait of Hormuz closure, Japan burned through strategic reserves faster than anyone expected. India imports 85% of their oil, mostly from the Gulf. The war hit India hard, but their government absorbed the shock through subsidies. Uzbekistan is partially shielded by Russian and Central Asian supply routes. Prices crept up slightly, but not much. United States drills its own oil, but still prices it against global crude markets. That's why when the Strait of Hormuz closed, prices shot up 33% overnight. Puerto Rico has zero strategic reserves. The war sent prices up over 31% on an island already struggling with energy costs. Pakistan's massive import dependency sent petrol prices up 42%, and the government ordered a 4-day work week to save fuel. Nicaragua has no Gulf dependency, so the Strait of Hormuz closing was someone else's emergency. Brazil's petrol prices rose slightly, but energy self-sufficiency meant they absorbed the shock far better than most of South America. Guinea has poor infrastructure and zero reserves. Prices jumped nearly 20%, and there was nothing the government could do except watch it happen. Guatemala imports all its fuel, economy already under pressure. Prices surged over 32%. China is world's biggest oil importer. Prices rose 28%. But China's strategic petroleum reserve and deals with Russia partially slowed the bleeding. Ghana is a minor oil producer. Fuel prices jumped 17% as import costs spiked. In Sri Lanka, the war pushed prices up 34%, and for a nation still recovering from economic collapse, this was the last thing they needed. Philippines is entirely import dependent, with one of the biggest price surges in Asia at 58%. Their government declared an energy emergency. Armenia buys from Iran and Russia both. With Iran at war, one of their two main fuel corridors collapsed, and prices climbed 14%. South Korea's prices rose 18%. the government released strategic reserves and issued emergency orders to manage the shock. Botswana's prices rose 17%, as every drop of imported fuel became more expensive to ship through disrupted global supply chains. Myanmar has the single biggest price shock on this entire list, a staggering 101% increase. It's a military-run economy with no reserves, no allies, and no backup plans. Ukraine already at war themselves, while a second global energy crisis hits simultaneously, is a logistical nightmare. Peru experienced a 43% global price shock, and Peruvians were paying record prices at the pump within weeks of the war starting. Spain's diversified energy supply and EU emergency reserve mechanisms kept the damage to almost nothing. Barbados sources fuel through Caribbean supply chains, outside Gulf dependency, which quietly saved them. Serbia is partially shielded by Russian pipeline oil. Prices edged up slightly, but in control. Slovakia has access to European Union emergency strategic reserves. Prices rose 13%, but crisis never happened. Rwanda has no oil, no reserves. When global prices exploded, Rwanda had absolutely nothing to soften the blow. Luxembourg's prices rose 16%, but their wealth meant the economic pain was absorbed without real crisis. Enjoying the video? Hit like and subscribe. Upcoming videos are even more interesting than this. Italy saw a 6% rise, but their government's response in fuel price cuts was faster than most, which kept the streets calm. UK imports most of its fuel and has some of Europe's heaviest fuel taxes already baked in. Portugal is heavily dependent on imported energy and felt the full force of rising global crude. Prices climbed 13%. France felt the war harder, but also reacted quickly. Macron released 20 to 30% of emergency reserves as prices surged 19%. Germany passed a law limiting petrol stations to raising prices only once a day to stop price gouging, still saw a 16% rise. Liechtenstein is dependent on Swiss and European supply chains. Prices rose 15%, purely because everything around them got expensive. Israel started the war, and wars are expensive. When global oil supply collapses because of you pay for it at the pump too. Hong Kong has the most expensive petrol on Earth. When you're already paying $4 a liter, a few cents more is peanuts. Hit like and subscribe for more interesting videos.